I think one of the basic kind of approaches that we've taken is to minimize the structure so that you can see the light within the glass. And any engineering kind of advances or thoughts that we've had are really about reducing the structure so that you can see the light. I mean, we've noticed if you make a very elaborate, complicated engineering structure, then sometimes that distracts from what you're actually looking at, either through the glass or reflected in the glass or held within the glass somehow. And so we're always sort of trying to reduce that structure, and that gets a reaction, I suppose, in that it's unusual. People haven't seen it before. I mean, the staircase in Hong Kong, there are clear glass treads, but it was a private staircase, and it was a decision that the client had to make whether they were comfortable with that, and that's what they wanted. So, and it also helps to bring the light down into the space below. It's a very small project, but it's kind of a little example. People in a public setting can appreciate the natural world. I mean, it's sort of like in a busy city like Bucharest or London or New York. It's a very crowded place, and people don't see the natural world very much, but it's manifested by the sun. The cycles of the sun passing every day, and if you can get people to understand that and appreciate it, then that's really what we're trying to do. So in a private setting, obviously it's only for one or two people, but that's not normal. We don't do very many private projects. I think, people walking on glass surfaces, it's really a decision. It's about whether people are comfortable doing that, and they haven't traditionally been very comfortable, of course,
so
because
it's
not culturally exactly. It's not a reaction that people are comfortable with necessarily, but I mean, a huge amount of work has been done in the last 20 years. And we've had a small part of that, but all of the Apple staircases, all of that stuff has meant that people are much more comfortable with that situation because they trust it. They know that it's safe. I mean, and that's really simple. That's just a matter of understanding what's likely to happen. And recently we have a project in Bangkok, and it's a public space in a museum it's cantilevered out over another public space, a sort of terrace. And we were talking about a glass floor with the client, and she wanted to have it clear. And we said, well, it's a public space. People are not very comfortable, not just walking on it, but also there's privacy issues, obviously looking up and so on. And she said, well, I think that's probably okay. It's kind of cool these days to have a view down and to be able to see and to do something slightly daring. The other part of your question about persuading contractors and clients, I think it's almost part of the same thing, actually, in that people get sort of comfortable with the idea that it can be done. I mean, we've had a lot of examples of we've worked with very, very good engineers, I have to say, and my partner James Carpenter, who started the whole practice and is in New York, has his own studio there, shares the one in London with me. He has been extremely persistent and dogged and in persuading, and he's a very convincing person, so he is able to persuade people that it's fine and it's interesting. And I think the important thing is that we've established a certain sort of position where we're talking about the quality of the experience, and you do have to get the very best engineers and the very best fabricators and build it really, really well to actually get that quality of experience. Because if it's quite easy for somebody to say, well, we'd like a glass wall or a glass staircase, transparent thing, and you get somebody who doesn't really know how to do that, and there are examples of that, we've had to fix one or two, and they build something but they don't know how to do it, and so they end up with a heavy frame, something really clumsy with a piece of glass stuck in it. I mean, we've all seen that. There are thousands of examples all over the place, and that means that you don't really appreciate light within the object. And that's if you can establish that's what you're trying to do, then and you have to obviously talk to the right people. I mean, we're not talking about everybody being able to do this yet, but
it's not enough to take a window and put it
no, exactly.
horizontal.
No, exactly. So there are certain fabricators that can do it, and there's engineers who are comfortable doing it. But it is more complicated. I mean, getting the approval for the staircase in Hong Kong, I'll talk about that a little bit, was was a nightmare. Took a long time.
Even if it was a private.
It was a private stair, and originally the client thought he didn't need to get approval from the building department because it was a private stair, but then he went into it and realized that he did have to, and it delayed the whole project for a year and a half while we got tests done and while we got the approvals wrapped up. But different building departments in different countries vary, so Hong Kong's particularly conservative, but it might not have been the same in London or in Germany. It might have been quite different. It depends on how the building department relates to the engineers. That's really critical, actually. Everybody has ideas and thoughts, but you can't get those into fruition, especially in something like architecture. You know, and especially a complicated element within architecture. You can't do that without a team. You need to work together. And that doesn't mean you just accept what everybody else says, but it means you have to understand what everybody else does and see if you can persuade them to do something a little more every time.